first read Stephen King's It, I was about the same age as the characters, either 11 or 12. It might have been the summer between 6th grade and 7th grade. I had just gotten into Stephen King books. The first one I read was Half Past Midnight, which was on my parents' bookshelf in the living room, so I just happened to notice it and picked it up and read the short stories, and that's how I got into Stephen King. During that summer, I read The Dark Half, Pet Sematary, and then I read Stephen King's It. And I was very proud of myself for reading a book that was over 1,000 pages. At that time, a lot of the things that were in the book completely went over my head, but I related to the kids in the book. Upon rereading the book now as an adult, that's the same age as the adults in the book, I can kind of relate more to the adults. On the surface, this seems like a book about 7 people battling an evil entity, but it really addresses a lot of societal issues like abuse, neglect, racism, trauma, poverty, and mental health. The book is around 1,400 pages long, and there's really too much material to fit into one movie. Really too much to fit into 2 movies. Plus, there's some scenes in the book that are very controversial to US audiences. I think the French movie industry will be able to put it into a film, but not so much the US. We are very puritanical about sexuality, but we can chop people up and shoot people in the head all day. Even our cartoons are graphically violent. But sexuality, clutch to pearls. But I'll get into those scenes later. Ideally, it should have been a Netflix type series like Stranger Things. Incidentally, the 2 gentlemen that did Stranger Things originally wanted to do Stephen King's It. They couldn't get the rights to Stephen King's It, so they created their own It type scenario with kids battling an evil entity. I do hope that someday they do get the opportunity because it really deserves at least an 8-part series. Let's talk about the characters. First, we have Bill Denborough, who the bullies call Stuttering Bill because he does have a stutter, which gets exasperated after his brother is found with his arm ripped off. Bill's little brother is the Georgie that you see in the trailer for It with the little raincoat on in a boat. He's dealing with the neglect of his parents because after his brother was murdered, they pretty much emotionally shut down and they ignore him most of the time because they are emotionally shut down. And that is a coping mechanism that some people tend to do to deal with trauma. As an adult in the book, he becomes a famous author and marries a famous actress, a famous British actress named Audra. Next, there's Richie Tozier, who is a smart mouth kid with some really thick glasses. Sometimes Richie finds it hard to regulate what he says. He kind of blurts things out and he doesn't mean to always blurt things out. And the way he's described, nowadays he would definitely be considered ADD or ADHD. He often has a little radio and listens to rock and roll and loves music. As an adult in the book, he becomes an on-air personality for a radio station in California. Next, there's Ben Hanscom, aka Haystack, and he is the chubby kid who is new in town and doesn't have any friends at first. He's a bookworm, loves going to the library, and is really into architecture and engineering, so to speak. His father died in the Korean War, and his mother is a single parent who works very hard to provide for him. After losing weight in high school, despite a really rude, well, I would say abusive track coach, he becomes a very successful, very wealthy architect. Stan Uris is a very straight-laced, neat, kind of type A personality Jewish kid. We don't get a whole lot about his family background. We just know that his father gave him the gift of a bird, I believe it's a bird book, because he likes to do bird watching, and I guess he looks in this book to identify the different birds. And I think he has a set of binoculars. As an adult, he meets his future wife in college and opens an accounting firm in, I think, Atlanta, Georgia. Eddie Kasprick is the smallest of the group of kids, and he's almost the most meek. I would say it's a tie between him and Stan. His father passed away from cancer, and it's inferred that his mother has a deep-seated psychosis because of this. So much so that she makes him take medicine that he doesn't need, and even convinced him that he has asthma, which he doesn't have, and makes him carry an inhaler. And so he does have these psychosomatically induced asthma attacks. She's also a supreme germaphobe, kind of teaches him almost that germs can cause him to catch cancer, which is not true at all. In the book, he grows up to marry a woman almost the same as his mother, but he does own his own limousine service in New York City. Beverly Marsh is the only girl in the group, and she's a tough little girl from the, quote, poor side of town. At one point in the book, her clothes are described as being too tight, specifically her shorts being too tight because she can't afford to buy new clothes and she's outgrown the clothes that she has. She lives in a kind of dilapidated apartment with her parents. Her mom works night at a diner, and I think her dad is a custodian of some sort. Her father is physically and emotionally abusive towards her. He often hits her for small things like maybe the dishes aren't done, and he accuses her of being very fast because she hangs out with little boys all the time. She's the only girl, so he says that doesn't look right. At one point, he even demands to check to see if her virginity's intact, and he says to her, "I worry about you, Bev. I worry a lot." Similarly to Eddie, she grows up to marry a extremely abusive man just like her father. The only only difference being the man that she marries is very wealthy. Finally, there's Mike Hanlon, who is a young black farmer kid. His father is an Army veteran who owns a farm. His mother is very sweet and loving, and out of all the kids in the book, he has the most intact, functional family. Mike is also the glue that holds the group together. A lot of the book is retold through Mike, and he is the one who does the research to find out about the town's history. After getting his bachelor's degree, he comes back to Derry. After getting his bachelor's degree, he returns to Derry and becomes a head librarian, researcher, and town historian. Some of the town's history is actually told through interviews that Mike has conducted with town elders. There are also some bully characters which you should know about. Henry Bowers is the main bully. He's the leader of the bullies, and he lives right down the street from Mike Hanlon. He actually tends to assault Mike with very racist terms, and he gets it from his father. His father was so racist that he actually went to Mike's father's farm and killed some of their chickens, and I can't remember whether it was Mike or his father, but one of them killed Mike's dog. It wasn't until Mike's father actually confronted Henry's father with a shotgun and pretty much told him, if you come on my property again, I'll blow your fucking head off, that Henry's father actually stopped. But Henry didn't stop trying to torment Mike. Henry's father is very physically abusive towards him, which is probably where he gets a lot of his bullying from. No mother is mentioned, and Henry eventually ends up murdering his father, and the townspeople blame Henry for all the murders that Pennywise committed, and then Henry ends up in a mental institution. Just when you thought Henry was bad, here comes Patrick Hockstetter. Can't say his name. Hockstetter. He's even worse than Henry. He actually keeps a pencil box filled with dead flies, and then he graduates from that to killing small animals, which he puts in a refrigerator in a landfill or dump type area and lets the animals suffocate to death. Eventually, Patrick suffocates his baby brother to death with a pillow, and Patrick even molests one of the other bullies. You know, most of what Patrick does is not going to make it into the movies, I'm afraid. But fortunately, Patrick didn't make it to adulthood either. It got him. Belch Huggins doesn't have a huge backstory. He's just kind of a big dumb guy that goes along with whatever Henry and Patrick tell him to do. I think he may have been the one that Patrick molested. It was either him or Victor Chris. We don't get a big backstory about Victor either. Victor is just another bully that's following whatever Patrick and Henry tell him to do. Victor is probably the least violent of them, because there is one point where Victor is like, I'm not participating in this, and he runs off. And I only scratched the surface on the character development in this book. I'm only giving you a basis of these characters so that you know what they're supposed to be like when you see them in cinematic form. If I really delve into these characters, this video would have to be 2 hours long. If you've read the book, you know that the Losers Club eventually battle it as children, and then they make a promise that if it comes back, they'll come back and battle it again. Now let's talk about it. While its most known representation is as Pennywise the Clown, it does not appear as Pennywise the Clown very much in the book. It appears as different things to different children. It really depends on what scares them. To Bill, it appears as the clown, and it also manipulates a picture of Georgie. To Ben, it appears as the creature from the Black Lagoon. To Richie, it appears as the Wolf Man. To Mike, it appears as a giant chicken creature. To Bev, it appears as the voices of the dead children coming through her bathroom sink and blood coming up from her bathroom sink. To Stan, it appears as dead children inside of the standpipe, although I also think that he sees a giant statue of Paul Bunyan come to life at some point in the book. To Eddie, it's a super perverted leper that comes out of the house on Niebolt Street. And here's another part that you're definitely not going to see in the movie. They might include the leper, but they definitely will not include the stuff that the leper said. As I said, he's a pervert. The leper offers to... There's no way to clean this up. The leper offers to suck Eddie's dick for 25 cents. As Eddie runs away, the leper revises his offer to doing it for 10 cents. And I know what you're thinking, what kind of crackhead leper is this? It's whatever scares you. More about it. It is 1,000 years old, or thousands and thousands of years old. And it first came to Earth in prehistoric times. It appears approximately every 30 years, and every time it appears, something horrific happens. It caused the massacre at Drake's Creek. Drake's Creek was a bar that the Canadian lumberjacks used to go to, and at one point these lumberjacks wanted to form a union so that they can be paid right and have rights, and at some point it influenced one of them to walk into the bar and massacre everyone with an axe. 30 years after that, the Ironworks facility held an Easter egg hunt for the children, and although everything was shut down and closed, the Ironworks facility blew up, and one of the graphic images that is described in the book is of a child's severed head in a tree. 30 years after that, there was a club called the Black Spot, which was basically a social club for the black soldiers to congregate since they weren't allowed to go to the white bars and restaurants. And a KKK type group locked the doors and set the place on fire and massacred a bunch of people. Mike Hanlon's father was one of the survivors. He was able to jump out of the window of that fire at the Black Spot. 30 years after that, the children start disappearing in the 1950s, and that's the part of the book where the main characters are children. And then 30 years after that, when they're adults start disappearing. And the book actually opens at that point when they are adults, and it starts with a gay couple that's being harassed after a pride event. There was a pride event being held, and a gay couple is walking home, and then they get harassed, and one of them gets pushed into a ravine or like a waterway type thing, and it gets that person. And I believe that's when Mike starts to see the other people missing, and he contacts everyone and says, it's back, it's happening again. But this time it's grabbing adult. Of course, in the 1990 version of the movie, they completely didn't include the gay couple, and most likely in the 27 version, they're not going to include the gay couple. Speaking of that, let's get into some other parts of the book that you're definitely not going to see in either of these movies. The cosmic turtle. There is a cosmic that is the nemesis of it, and also thousands and thousands of years old. Leaving this out is very understandable, because how exactly do you put a cosmic turtle in a movie and still make it believable? That's a really hard sell. The Smokehouse is not going to be in either movie. Ben actually read about Native American traditions of having a smokehouse that allows you to have visions of what to do when you're trying to make decisions. The kids reenact this, and they try to have their own smokehouse. The only two, I believe, that were able to stay in the smokehouse were Ben and Mike, and they were the ones that saw the vision of when it first came to the earth from the atmosphere during prehistoric times. And this is also how they find out how they're going to kill it. It, in its final form, is expressed in the 1990s movie as a spider-type creature. In the book, it is described as pretty much indescribable to the human mind, in that the closest approximation that the human mind can associate it with is a spider, but that's not exactly what it is. The Ritual of Chüd will probably not be in either movie. The Ritual of Chüd is how they figure to defeat it. And in the Ritual Chüd, you're supposed to lock tongues with the creature and begin telling jokes until one of you laughs. The first one to laugh loses. That's how it's first described by the children, but when they actually do the Ritual of Chüd, it's more like locking minds with the creature. Not literally tying tongues, but almost the closest thing I can think of is the Vulcan mind meld, where you lock minds with the creature and you have a battle of wits, so to speak. In the book, Bill starts the Ritual of Chüd with it, but then Richie has to finish it. Also, it is female. When they go to its lair for the final showdown, they discover its eggs. While Bill and Richie are doing the Ritual of Chüd, Ben is running around, and this is in their adult incarnations. Ben is running around destroying all of its eggs to make sure it doesn't create more its. And finally, the thing that you probably all been waiting for me to discuss is the group sex scene. After they fought it as children, they become lost in the tunnels, and they are not completely sure that it is dead. And Bev kind of comes to the conclusion that it only kills children. Therefore, if they are no longer children, it can't kill them. This is what prompts her to encourage, or actually she pretty much convinces each of the boys to have sex with her so that none of them will symbolically be children anymore, and it will not be able to get them. This is their thought process behind that. It wasn't just, oh hey, let's just have a group sex scene. There was an actual reasoning behind it. Yes, that seems like an extreme thing, but being stalked by a thousands of year old interdimensional demon creature that rips children's arms off is pretty extreme too. There is an Easter egg in the book. When Henry Bowers escapes the mental institution as an adult to attack Mike, after that attack happens, he's picked up by a Plymouth Fury. And if you know Stephen King, you know that the Plymouth Fury is the famous car from Christine. Stephen King's It is one of the best books that I've read in my lifetime, and it's definitely among my favorites. When the miniseries came out in the 1990s, it scared the crap out of us kids, and I'm actually about to rewatch it as an adult to see how I feel about it. Also to kind of compare how close it comes to the book. And I'll let you know about that in just a moment. I can hear the rain outside. That's kind of apropos. Okay, so as I talk about the 1990 movie, I'm just gonna kind of jump back and forth between the movie and the book. Hopefully this makes sense. But before I start, I do want you to know I'm not completely against things being changed for a movie if they make sense. If it makes sense for the character to do something, then okay, but if there's literally no reason to change certain things, then that's when I kind of have a problem with it. I'm all for taking artistic liberty, but if there's no reason to change something, why change it? The movie starts out with a child victim being found instead of, you know, the aforementioned gay couple. This is what prompts Mike to get in contact with the Losers Club again to let them know that it is back. We get introduced to Bill and his British wife, which is book accurate. He's writing a screenplay based on his book for a movie, and I thought it was funny how there was a line in there about, if I'm gonna have my work mangled, I better mangle it myself. And I could hear Stephen King talking through that quote, because he has allowed his books to be turned into crappy movies over and over again. An odd change, and I don't know why they made it, was that they had Mike call Bill first. In the book, he actually called Stan first. I actually think that would have been more impactful since Stan committed suicide upon hearing the news, so starting the movie with Stan being called first would have been way more impactful. We get a flashback to Bill as a child, and his mom is playing Für Elise on the piano, which she is described as doing in the book. He makes a boat for Georgie, and of course Georgie gets got by Pennywise just as he did in the book. In a movie, when Bill sees Georgie's picture moving in the picture book and bleeding, he tells his parents. In the book, he never told his parents because his parents didn't pay attention to him. He only told the Losers Club. One of his main characteristics, as I said earlier, is that his parents didn't pay attention to him. Ben gets introduced hanging out with a model type woman as an adult, and that's not how he was introduced in the book at all as an adult. He was hanging out by himself in a bar. And then it flashes back to him being a chubby kid and Henry bullying him. In the book, Henry actually starts to carve the letter H. Well, Henry intended to carve his whole name in Ben's stomach, but he started carving the letter H in his stomach before he broke free and was able to run into the Losers Club. Of course, they didn't show that in this movie. That might seem extreme to some of the younger people watching, but back in the day, bullying was pretty bad. I once had someone rub Preparation H in my eyes on a school bus in 7th grade. That's back in the 80s when there was no cyberbullying. Bullying was in your face, literally punched in the face. We meet Eddie as a kid, and he and Ben bond over their dads being deceased. I explained earlier how Eddie's father passed away from cancer and how it affected his mother's psychosis. For some reason, the movie added the characters of Ben's aunt and cousin. They were not present in the book. It was just Ben and his mother. And Ben was not really poor. I mean, his mother worked hard to provide for him as a single mother would, but he was not poor. He actually usually had money to buy candy and other extra stuff. His main issue was his loneliness and not having any friends. I didn't really see the purpose of that change. Also, as I said before, Ben didn't see Pennywise the clown. He saw the creature from the Black Lagoon, and he certainly didn't see his father waving to him in the water. That's all added. For what reason? I don't know. I wish they would have kept it that way, but I'm sure they probably ran into issues securing the rights for Universal monsters, because the creature from the Black Lagoon, I think Ben also saw it as the Mummy. I forgot to say in the book, Ben also saw it as the Mummy. So, and that's another Universal creature, as is the Wolfman. So they probably didn't keep those things intact because of getting the rights from Universal to use those creatures. Next, we meet Bev as an adult. We're introduced to her extremely abusive husband. When she gets the call from Mike, she has to fight her husband to escape, and that's done pretty similarly to in the book, although not as severely, because she fights him and is able to get away mostly intact. But in the book, she actually had to leave the house with no shoes on and without her purse, and she had to call a friend just to borrow enough money to get out of town. The flashback to her as a child and hearing the voices coming out of the sink and the blood coming up out of the sink it plays out just as it did in the book. Bev does have a mother, as I noted earlier from the book, but in this movie version, she's never shown or mentioned. It just shows Bev with her father. And I kind of don't understand why they're adding characters such as Ben's aunt and cousin and then removing characters such as Bev's mother. She did work nights at a diner, but she was present. Richie is introduced almost word for word the way he was in the book. Another change is the whole sequence with Pennywise in the shower with Eddie. That never happened. As I said in the first part of this video, Eddie didn't see the clown at all. He saw a crackhead leper that offered sexual favors. But you can't have that in a movie. Society says no. All my Stephen King fans will know where that's from. The apocalyptic rock fight happened just about the same as it did in the book, with the exception that it was only rocks. In the book, the bullies were actually throwing M80, is that what they're called? Yeah, M80 firecrackers at the kids, and those are the type of firecrackers that can blow your fingers off, so That's a pretty extreme thing to do. They did include Ben's story about the track coach and how he lost weight, so that was cool. The library scenes with Pennywise were just as they were in the book. They kept in that line, he thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghost. This is a line that Bill used to practice to try to overcome his stuttering. In a movie, they showed Bev cleaning the bathroom by herself, but in the book, the Losers Club went over to her apartment and helped clean the bathroom with her. Bev returning to the old apartment and seeing the ghoul woman, just like in the book. Kiss me, fat boy. Not in the book, but I enjoyed it. I kind of like how they added that. It is definitely something it would have said. Henry attacks Mike when Mike's in the library by himself, and the Losers Club doesn't find out about it until they get a call from the hospital where Mike is at. As an adult, Bev briefly hooked up with Bill, but eventually left, and I think it's implied that she got married to Ben. This actually kind of bothered me in the book because Ben loved Bev, and I believe Bev loved Ben as well. So I don't know why King had her hook up with Bill first. It didn't make sense. Also, it didn't suit Bill's character. His character was a pretty upstanding guy, and why would he do that to his wife? It kind of was out of character. I don't know why Stephen King did that. It just didn't make sense. So I'm actually glad that they did change that for the movie. Other characters left out. Bev and Eddie are both married. In the movie, they made Bev just have a boyfriend, but it was really, she had a husband. And Eddie had a wife that was exactly like his overbearing, hypochondriac, nearly Munchausen syndrome by proxy mother. Also, the movie made Eddie a virgin, which made no sense because of the whole sex scene with the kids in the tunnel. And like I said, he was married. In the movie, they did have Bill's wife Audra come after him, which is book accurate, but Bev's husband, can't remember his name, also came after her as well. Pennywise killed Bev's husband and then put Audra in a cocoon. And Audra became catatonic after seeing its deadlights. So the deadlights were included. Bill riding Audra on the handlebars of silver was just like it was from the book, and it did kind of revive her. I like this line that Pennywise said in the movie, "I'll drive you crazy and then I'll kill you." It's good because it tells you its intention. This is why he taunted the kids and didn't immediately kill them a lot of the time. As I said earlier, when we saw this as kids, it scared the crap out of us. Seeing it now as an adult, not so much, but Tim Curry really is iconic for playing Pennywise. Hell, one of my sisters is so scared of it, she refuses to even watch the remake. She refuses to rewatch the 1990 version. Some of the effects in this come across as hokey 27 years later, but that's to be expected. It's very rare when effects hold up over the years because of, advances in technology. I do wonder what young people today think of the 1990 version of it. If you're watching this video and you were born after 1990 and you watched the 1990 version of it, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you like Tim Curry's portrayal of Pennywise? Did the situations make sense? How did you feel about it? I give this a 7 out of 10 for enjoyment, and I admit it is informed by my sense of nostalgia. I will completely admit to that. Now let me go check out this new It. Okay, I'm back to talk to you about 2017 It, and I'm playing Beat the Clock because my camera's battery is kind of low and hopefully it won't shut off before I finish what I have to say. This starts off with Bill helping Georgie with the boat, same as the 1990 version, same as inside the book. However, Georgie's death scene is more graphic. They actually show Pennywise biting his arm off, and then they even show a kindergartner crawling across the pavement without his arm. I was not expecting to see that, so this movie is definitely not nutless. I did not like how they introduced Mike. They completely changed him. The only thing they kept intact was that he was a farm kid. They made him have this mean-ass grandfather. That was not the case. Let me count the ways of how they changed Mike. His dad had an agricultural farm. The only livestock they had was a chicken coop, and they had a pet dog. Mike had both his parents. They were a loving family. He didn't have any issues with his mother or his father. As a matter of fact, he had a very supportive relationship, and I can even remember his father telling him that he loved it. Mike was not homeschooled. Mike went to a private Christian academy. He did not see Pennywise the Clown when he was being attacked by Henry. He saw Pennywise the Clown when he was playing the trumpet in the marching band. And what bugs about that is they literally had a marching band in the movie and didn't have Mike playing the trumpet in it. The massacre at Drake's, the ironwork explosion, the fire at the Black Spot, these are all things that Mike found out through his research, although he was told about the fire at the Black Spot from his father. It felt like in this movie they gave Mike's They did give Mike's attributes to Ben. Mike was very much into studying history, not Ben. Ben was into building things and architecture. Mike's the one that told the kids about the town's history. And as I said earlier, he's a very main character in the book, and he's the glue that holds the whole group together. It really irked me because I'm like, why take all the good characteristics away from the black character? It really made me side-eye the director, like, this is low-key racist. Did you feel uncomfortable having a black character that had a good upbringing, that was intelligent, that was into history and books, that went to a Christian school, that had loving parents? Why take all these things away from him? I mean, seriously, fuck you for that. I can't even, a part of me doesn't even want to finish this review. I'm so upset about that. But he thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghosts. All the other characters were pretty much book accurate except for Ben. They didn't put a lot in about his mom. Well, they didn't put anything in about his mother, and they didn't really put anything in about him being into building things in architecture. Ben had his own really good attributes. They did get the extent to which Ben was bullied correct. And it actually showed Henry Bowers beginning to carve his name into Ben's stomach, and that whole sequence on the bridge and him kicking Henry and going over, that's all just like the book, and the other bullies chasing after him. That was extremely accurate to the book. Also accurate to the book was the haiku poem that Ben wrote on the postcard to Bev. That's the word for word the same poem that was in the book. What I just said about he thrusts his fists against the post and still insists he sees the ghost, they did show Bill practicing that, which was to help him with his stutter. Let's talk about the stuff from the book that they did include. They showed Bill's bike twice, and it said Silver on it, which was the name of Bill's bike, and he actually used to yell "Hi-ho Silver," which they did have him do in the 1990s version, but they didn't have him do it in this version. They showed the standpipe 3 times. The first time you see it, Ben is holding a small replica that he made of the standpipe. You see it a second time on the cover of the postcard that Ben sends to Bev, and then you see the standpipe itself in the background of one of the scenes. Eddie's mom is exactly as she's described in the book. I was gonna say, even down to how fat she is, I kind of feel some type of way about them having the actress wear a fat suit instead of just having is it body shaming to say fat actress? I don't know. I'm just being observational. I'm not trying to put the person down, but I feel like they missed an opportunity to hire an actual fat actress instead of having someone who's clearly wearing body padding. He never does confront her though about the placebos, but that scene was funny because he mispronounced it and said they're gazebo. There was an I Heart Dairy balloon, which they used in the book. The gay couple that gets killed at the very beginning of the book, they see a tunnel full of I Heart Dairy balloons. Bev's shorts being too tight, which, as I told you earlier, was because she couldn't afford newer clothes and had outgrown old clothes. The key around her neck was also a really good addition because it shows how she was a latchkey kid. They did a really good job with the leper that came out of the house on Niebolt Street. Of course, as I said, they couldn't say what he really said in the book because that would be too much, but they did a good job with how he looked and how terrifying that would be for Eddie. They had a really nice montage of the Losers Club helping Bev clean up the bathroom, which they did in the book. There was a sighting of the Paul Bunyan statue in the background of one of the scenes. Henry does receive the knife in the mailbox sent to him from Pennywise with the balloon attached, and he does end up killing his father with that very same knife. Now let's talk about the things that are not book accurate. There's a scene in a synagogue where a lady comes out of a painting and attacks Stan. That was not in the book. Though the scene was well done, I felt like the director just wanted to reuse a mock-up of his character from Mama. That and take away the agency of black characters. They killed Patrick right away, which was not the case in the book, and we didn't even get to see 1/10 of how sick Patrick was. They ended up killing Henry, which did not happen in the book. Henry was remanded to a mental institution after he was convicted for killing his father and also blamed for all of Pennywise's murders. But in this, he fell down a well that he could not have possibly survived. As I said earlier in the book, Bev did have to escape her father. In this, she clean knocked him out with the top of a porcelain toilet seat. That didn't happen in the book. She never struck her father. She just outran him. Plus, they kind of made it seem like he wanted to rape her, which was not the case in the book. He wanted to check her to see if her virginity was intact, which is still a form of sexual assault. I just don't know why they changed that. Then they had him say, "You worry me, Bev. You worry me a lot." This might be nitpicking, but the line is, "I worry about you, Bev. I worry a lot." The swimming scene obviously was not in the book. Plus, Ben would not have been in his underwears. This is a kid that wore a sweatshirt in the middle of the summertime to cover up his body because he was so self-conscious about being overweight. Of course, the cosmic turtle was not included, but there were some Easter eggs about the turtle. When they were swimming, you hear someone mention, "Oh, there goes a turtle." And then there's also a scene where Bill is holding a turtle toy. It looks like it's made out of Legos in one point in the movie. So those are kind of cool Easter eggs that allude to the cosmic turtle. They all went into the house on Niebolt Street together. There was no one left standing guard. They just all went in together. Throughout the book, they always did things together, which is what kept them safe. Relatively safe, I should say, because Eddie's arm was broken by the bullies. I can't remember whether it was Henry or Victor that broke Eddie's arm, but one of them broke Eddie's arm. It was not from him falling. In the book, it was the pharmacist that told Eddie about the placebos and about his inhaler being filled with, what was it, menthol and water. In this, they had the teenage store clerk tell him. I didn't really mind that change. It kind of made sense. There was no fight between Mike and Henry as children. There wasn't a fight until they are adults and Henry escapes the mental institution to try to stab Mike to death. Fortunately, he fails. He cuts Mike, but Mike is able to fight him off with, I think, a letter opener. Oh, and Pennywise never kidnapped Bev. The kids all decided to go down into the sewer to fight Pennywise together. They weren't prompted to go and rescue Bev. There were some things that were added in this movie that I did like. Bev's female bullies were not in the book, but I did like that it was more realistic for how middle school works, especially middle school life in the 80s. Patrick using the lighter and hairspray. I like that. That was a nice touch that was super realistic. As someone who was in middle school in the 80s, I remember there was kids like Patrick that used to use the lighter and hairspray and shoot firebombs out the back windows of the bus, and you could probably blame them for why there are cameras on the buses today. I like the 3 doors in that room in the house on Niebolt Street that read scary, very scary, and not scary at all. There's a scene where Bev is in a trance and they're trying to get her out of the trance, and Ben kisses her and she comes out of the trance. I thought that was kind of cute. I very much prefer the way they attacked it in this sequence. In the 1990 version, they used a slingshot and Bev shot it with some silver pieces with a slingshot. In this, they rolled on him. They hit him with lead pipes, baseball bats, chains. I mean, they stomped on him like if you got jumped by a gang. That's what they did to it. I thought that was, is it wrong to say it was cute? It was kind of cute to see these middle school kids beating up this evil entity. I liked all of Richie's updated smartass lines, especially when he said, "You punched me, you made me walk through shitty water, dragged me through a crack house, and now I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown." I thought that was hilarious when I heard it. I mean, I have delivered it as well as he did, but it was funny. So for the most part, they got the story right from the book, except for what they did to Mike and Ben. Seriously, to the writers and the director that made those changes to Mike's character, you guys are a bag of assholes, and I don't know why you did what you did. And making Richie's character extra entertaining does not make up for what you did to Mike. So I just want you to know that. Also, for the jump scares, you did that super loud bong musical cue, which I hate, and congratulations, you startled people. It's not scary. Please stop doing that. Plus, you cranked everything up to 11. The scene with the blood coming out of the sink with Bev did not benefit from having her own hair attack her. Why add that? Just being extra. I can see how you can update the scene with the projector. In the original, Pennywise's hand comes out of the photograph at the kids. That's scary. I can see you updating that with having Pennywise jump out of the projector. Why did you make him 10 feet tall and super huge? You took something from being scary to being silly, and if you really want to see how to make a projector scene creepy, just watch Sinister. The creepiest stuff in Sinister was the scenes with the projector. Also, a thing that you really ruined the movie with was adding CGI to the scare scenes. Unnecessary, and you took, again, something from being scary to being silly. I give this a 6 out of 10 for enjoyment, for Richie, Eddie, and Stan providing some good chucks. And I would say if you've never read the book or watched the 1990 version, you would probably really enjoy this. It's not a bad movie. It's just you kind of crapped on the fans by doing what you did to Mike. So if you never read the book and you never saw the 1990 version, it wouldn't bother you at all because you would just accept his character as it is. But if you read the book and saw the 1990 version, then you know, even before me telling you, that Mike is a very main character in the book, and a lot of the story is told through him and recounted through his experiences of interviewing the town elders, and you know that he is the person that holds the group together. You might be as pissed as I am that they relegated him to damn near a supporting character, and I will not forgive you for that, and I probably will not see part 2 in a movie theater. I'll wait until they play that crap on, like, I don't know, Chiller or some crap. I'm not paying to see that because of what you did. I'll just end this video showing my lovely shirt that I found at Target. It says, "The book was better." I actually found this just like 4 days ago, and it just made sense to wear it in this video. And I'm glad I finally made it through this video because I had so much technical difficulty. First, my SD card was full. Then I emptied the SD card, put it back in, and it's still saying that it is full, and it wasn't being read. So then I took another SD card out of another camera and put that one in, and I started using that one in the camera, ran out of juice, and I had to wait for it to charge, and then I had to stop and go several times. Hopefully this becomes one cohesive thing that doesn't look like I had to stop and go as many times as I did, but I just wanted to rant for a minute so you know what I had to go through. I know these are first world problems, right? I shouldn't even be complaining about this. There's people dying and starving in the world, and I'm complaining about first world problems. Forget all that. I'm glad I finally got to do my first book review and tie it into the 1990 It and the 2017 It. I hope you enjoyed the video.